Welcome to RoboNation's Community Hour, the first one for 2022. We're taking a little bit of a different approach with community hours this year. We started them back in 2020, particularly with our autonomous programs or university programs, as some of you may have heard of them, wanting to make sure that we could connect the community in a way online, as we've all shifted online over the past few years. But as we've evolved, and this year we're going back in person, we wanted to kind of grow this opportunity more to reach the larger RoboNation community. Anyone that's interested in what RoboNation's doing or robotics in general, just wanted to give you an opportunity to connect with the rest of the RoboNation community. So today we have the special honor of getting to know a little bit more about RoboNation, where it got started and where it's going, particularly told from our perspective of our head human, Daryl Davidson, aka our executive director. But before I get too into it, I just wanted to go over some housekeeping. If you could go into the participant list and change your name. Some of you already have done so, as you can see, but let us know what community you're a part of. If you're a part of one of our programs, or maybe multiple programs, as you see as the example on here, RoboBoat and RobotX. Maybe you're a sponsor, a past judge, whatever role you play in the community, let us know. And then just let us know in the chat what sort of engagement you've had with RoboNation, whether you've been a team or a judge, sponsor, maybe an educational partner, whatever that role has been, let us know in the chat so that we can get to know you a little bit better, get to know who's on the call today with us. All right. As we're getting a few more people join in, just going to go ahead and get started. So as most of you have probably known as you signed up for this call, we're going to get an inside scoop from Daryl Davidson today. So just wanted to showcase all the different programs we have at RoboNation first. Again, many of you have been involved in one or multiple of our programs over the years, but all of these encompass what RoboNation is all about. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce Laverne Imori, our community engagement coordinator, who is actually going to be what we're calling the Inquisitor. She's going to be the one that is truly interviewing Daryl as we go through. Thank you for anyone that has submitted any of your questions through your registration or over email. We have compiled quite a few, and we're going to try to get through as many as possible. But if you have any that come through, just let us know in the chat and we'll see if we can get through any of them. So without further ado, Laverne, take it away.
Hi, RoboNation community. Hi, Daryl. He's moving. But before we get started today, we have a lot of great questions, but wanted to put Daryl into context before we get started. And so here's some cliff notes on Daryl. Daryl went to Texas A&M University and he majored in, he got a BS in journalism. What do you think about that? 1981 to 1985. And then he became public relations coordinator for Bombardier in Virginia. And he was there between 1991 and 1993. And in 93, he actually started up his own firm and named it Davidson Public Relations. Some of his clients actually hired him, or one of his clients actually hired him in 1996, and that was AUVSI, and he joined AUVSI in 1996 as their executive director. And he was there for, 12 years. And then he moved over to become executive director of what is now RoboNation. Just a few other tidbits of information about Daryl to kind of put him into context. He is one of 17 other Daryl Davidsons on LinkedIn. And they all have different kinds of backgrounds. He has logged 229 tweets, if any of you are tweeters, in 13 years, compared to Elon Musk. I don't know how long Elon has been on Twitter, but Elon has 16,900 tweets. Viz Stone, who's the founder of Twitter, logged 9,800 tweets, and RoboNation has 4,500 tweets, compared to Daryl's 229 in 13 years. So that's a little bit about Daryl in context. And so let's move on to our first question. So the first question is actually a poll that we're going to do. And that is, what was RoboNation's first name? So as people are responding to the poll, Daryl, you want to say hello now that you're settled?
I thought I would just sit here and take the abuse and the mockery a little bit longer. I certainly don't want to affect the poll. But you know, I demonstrating what the definition of anti-social media is all about through my limited number of tweets. So yes, thank you, Laverne.
You're
this
welcome.
is going to be interesting.
Yeah, well, you know, they asked me to do this because I'm the quiet one of the group. So, so Daryl, though, as people are responding to the poll, I heard a rumor. That I'm hoping that you can confirm that you tried to get onto a TV show that you applied maybe a few years. You want to confirm that as we're completing this poll? Either Daryl is frozen or he doesn't want to.
Yeah, no, you dropped out a little bit. Am I through to be spazzing out, which it's always very good. Can you hear?
I think your other place was maybe a better.
You think what?
You're kind of cutting in. You're freezing in and out. You're tweeting in and out.
Yeah. Well, let me try to answer, and I will. I don't know why the connection chose tonight to start dropping out. Probably because of all of the old timers that we've got on the call tonight, which is pretty fun, by the way.
Wait just a minute, Daryl. Time out. So I think we have about as many responses as we're going to get. So we're going to go back to the question and the poll, if you don't mind. Well, maybe you mind, but we're going to go back to the poll. So let's see what are the responses here. It looks like what's leading?
Bot World.
AUVSI Foundation has half of the votes. Bot World has 4 votes. And RoboNation has 1. And then when did RoboNation begin? 1996. Well, I guess, did we give away that answer? I think we did. Oh, there was only one choice anyway. Okay, so that's just kind of the response. So I think, Daryl, you probably have the answer to that question. So can we go back to what was the question again? The Inquisitor can't remember.
Well, Laverne, can you have Daryl answer the questions on the poll first?
Oh yeah, there you go. Okay.
I'm going to log off and log back real quick. I apologize for that.
What?
There's always issues with electronics.
We're having
Janelle, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you want
to? I'm going to jump out and come back.
Okay. Janelle's going to step in for you while you're gone. I think he's gone.
Looks like he's just frozen. Where are you putting? You're not putting me on the spot with personal questions, though, right? This is
no, not any personal questions. If you could just let us know RoboNation questions. For now, it depends on how long Daryl's going to be off the call.
Oh, I think my internet is also spotty and freezing. No, just kidding. He looks like he's back. Are you back? Yes.
I'm back.
I stalled enough. I don't have to do it.
All right. So we still answering the questions? Is that the issue? The names?
Yep. Yes.
All right. So the simple answer, the somewhat simple answer is that we started as the AUVSI Foundation because we spun out of the organization that's known as AUVSI, which if you don't know it, you need to know of it. Recently renamed themselves the Association for Uncrewed to be more gender neutral than unmanned, Uncrewed Vehicle Systems International. And that was just as of about a week ago. But AUVSI is a professional organization that covers all things unmanned. And the competitions, the student competitions that are such a key part of RoboNation started as student efforts and outreach efforts underneath AUVSI all the way back to 1991. So the IARC, the International Aerial Robotics Competition, was the very first event that was ever held as far as student competitions. It was in 1991 at Georgia Tech. 2 years later, the IGVC, the ground competition, came about. And then in 1998, with the great support of Tom Curtin and the US Office of Naval Research, we started what's now known as RoboSub. And those were the three core competitions that really are what sort of prompted the growth of what is now RoboNation. So the AUVSI Foundation took on those competitions and moved them from AUVSI to the foundation. And then we later figured out that the acronym, and for a variety of other reasons, RoboNation made more sense. And so we changed the name to RoboNation, and that's what most of you know today. Even though I like Bot World as well, I think that was kind of cool. That sounds like a big gathering of people with robotic interests. Is that okay, Inquisitor?
Yes, thank you very much. That was a very thorough response. I, for one, was very happy with it. So, okay, so let's move on to the next question. Let's see. What did the foundation look like when it first started? And which programs existed back then? So we're going to put up a poll, but we're going to ask you to go ahead and respond as that poll is running.
But yes, to answer the second question, which is when did the AUVSI Foundation begin or start?
That would have been, I believe, Janelle, 2014. It was later than, I mean, we started using the RoboNation name before we officially changed the name. So it was still technically the foundation, and then we were using the RoboNation as a brand. And then we ultimately changed the name, but that was only a few years ago, the technical name change.
Question was, when did RoboNation start? So when did the, yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was later.
Yep. Much later. And given that the average age of most of our competitors, I wouldn't even have a guess of what that is. If you factor in the K through 12 side of it, all of this is ancient history to them. So.
Hey, Daryl, Steve Kopenik here. I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, because the last time we did an MOA, we had to do a name change.
Yeah, that's about right.
Thank you for responding to that question, Steve.
What was the first competition RoboNation AUVSI Foundation hosted? Well, again, the first competition ever was the IARC. But it existed before the foundation existed. So those first three, IARC, IGVC, and RoboSub, which was the autonomous underwater vehicle competition. Now you wonder why we changed the name. Those three were all technically started under AUVSI. But I think we're splitting hairs, and I'm not sure that unless we've got a bunch of lawyers or trademark specialists on the call. '91 was number 2. Spoiler alert.
What are the poll responses? I think Daryl answered that question. Can we move on to the next question? Or do we need to share the poll results? Can everybody see the poll results? Okay, so Joanne, if you could run this video.
Daryl Davidson. I'm the Executive Director of the AUVSI Foundation. The AUVSI Foundation is a sister organization of the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International. And as you were mentioning earlier, AUVSI exists for the business side of the unmanned systems of the robotics community, whereas the AUVSI Foundation exists for educational outreach programs. So the foundation is really developing the next generation of the professionals that are going to be working in the robotics industry going forward.
So my question is not recorded here, but my question is, anybody notice Daryl's hat? And staff, you can't answer this because you know most of you know the answer to this. Anybody recognize that hat he's wearing? So this is...
It's a white hat.
It's a white hat.
Yeah.
This is 10 years ago. And it is, Daryl was at a was it a RoboBoat, Joanna, event?
No, it was a sub event. Steve Kopenick knows exactly where that was.
You're sitting in my office with the picture, and I have 20 of those hats.
Exactly.
So you recognize the hat, Steve?
Oh, I do now that you see this, because I see the picture behind and I know where Daryl is.
Yeah, and that's Daryl 10 years ago. So
Daryl was much younger then.
Yeah, 10 years to be exact.
So Daryl, you were quoted as saying the foundation is focused on getting students interested in robotics and providing them with the education and experience, mainly through hands-on robotic competitions, to prepare them for careers in the robotics industry. Now, this was some time ago. Now, when you go to our website, you will see that our vision statement is, we envision a world where technology unites people to learn, share, and create. Our mission is to provide a pathway of hands-on educational experiences that empowers students to find innovative solutions to global challenges. So my next question is, why and how did this focus evolve from what was stated several years ago to what it is today?
Well, 10 or 11 years ago, when that quote was there, we were still sort of feeling our way. We had just started managing and taken over the CPERCH program. So that was the first K through 12 piece of the equation. Previously, we had only been dealing at the university, or sort of the advanced high school university level, which is what we now call our autonomy events. And so when the K through 12 part of it came in, it opened up the aperture in terms of the impact that we thought we might be able to achieve as an organization. And I also think that we evolved in terms of our staff was growing. We brought in a bunch of fantastic people with tremendous perspective and great vision. And we were able to look at the art of the possible, and we expanded it beyond just thinking that we were creating this community of students that enjoyed robotics and maybe would go on to work in the professional side of that. More importantly, we thought we were equipping students to build a bot and change the world, which is the tagline that we use now. So we don't necessarily concern ourselves with how many go on into the industry, but we think that the tools, the programs, the steps, and the things that go into the students that start oftentimes in CPERCH and go all the way up through the high end of our autonomy events up to RobotX, those students are equipped through hands-on experience, through vision, and through the use of technology to do things that can literally change the world. And that's really what we're more focused on, is just equipping our students and not necessarily the outcome of the robotics industry.
Thanks, Daryl. And what are your aspirations for the future of RoboNation and RoboNation's place in the global robotics community of, let's say, 2050?
We want to keep growing our programs, not only the ones that we have, but we want to create new opportunities. We want to create programs and opportunities that are more virtually accessible. I think one of the key things we've learned during the last 2 years is that there are a lot of students, excuse me, a lot of students cannot get together, or they don't have the resources to travel and participate in an in-person event. But there are a great many ways that we can provide the same opportunities to students to learn, to experience, to be part of a community without physically joining other students. And so we want to continue to grow and expand that, but we also really want to get into more content delivery of the why. Okay, so you've designed or built or deployed an unmanned systems at whatever level and in whatever domain. What do they do? What are they used for? What are the types of good that we can do, whether it's monitoring the ocean's health or whether it is taking samples of air quality, any number of other things that we have sort of programs in our pipeline that will address some of those. And we want to make sure that students understand, just because you've gone through the process of building a robot, generally speaking, what does it do? What's it used for? And that's where we want to focus as well, more on the why and why these things are important, not just in doing them themselves.
Thank you. You know, we love polls, right? Can you tell? So we have another poll for you, and this is actually a poll for, well, so we're providing you with some questions that actually came to us previously, and so we want you to pick a question that you want Daryl to answer. What has been one of the most important characteristics needed to succeed in your career? What's one thing you're most proud of after 10 plus years of RoboNation? Actually, I think in total since the AUVSI Foundation, it's like 26 years, right, Daryl? At least 25. This is, I will say, this is one I like. If you were a sea creature, what would it be? And the other
I like
part
that
of
one.
this, yeah, the other part of this is, who do you think asked that question? And then finally, how important has the impact of outreach events helped the RoboNation community grow? So as we're waiting for more people to respond to the poll, I just want to acknowledge that we have a really wonderful mix of RoboNation community. We have our student participants, we have alumni participants, I noticed. We have many, many partners who have joined us and probably wanted to hear Daryl ask some tough, be asked and answered some tough questions. So here's your chance to pick a tough question for Daryl. I know sea creatures is kind of leading the pack here.
That's easy. It's a dolphin.
That was too easy. Okay.
No,
So
to me, that's very easy. That's what, without a doubt, that's what I would be.
Why?
I don't know. I mean, if you really want to go back and look at a dated film, go watch Day of the Dolphin with George C. Scott, that, you know, most of the older crowd might remember. But I just think dolphins are amazing. I think they're playful, they're smart. You know, we've gotten to visit over the years things like the mammal complex at what used to be Spaywar, which is now Nywick, and you start to realize the importance of what the. Oh no! Don't make me answer the hard one. I was trying to go with the easy one. Come on. All right, somebody else needs to vote for the third one, so it's the clear winner.
Well, you already
But
answered it, so.
I guess I could, yeah, I could vote. No, I guess I can't vote for it. So bummer. Anyway, so yeah, no, I mean, I've always wanted to either be a dolphin or if I had to be something else, probably a falcon. If I was going to be an airborne creature, I like birds of prey.
Would you not want to be a stingray?
No. Yeah, Finding Nemo notwithstanding, I mean, there are a lot of cool animals there, but dolphins.
Stingrays are the best food for great white sharks.
Yeah, no thanks.
I see we have a representative from an organization where its founder actually discovered a species of, I think it was a manta ray or a ray of some sort, and it was named after him. So welcome, Mary. Okay. Oh, it's a tie, Daryl. I think that means that you need to
I think we should move on.
Answer this next question, Daryl. How important has the impact of outreach events helped the RoboNation community grow?
Oh, it's been, I mean, it's, I don't know, it's, to me, it's self-evident that the simple nature of what we do is almost universally appealing. It's, I remember anytime that I talk to somebody, whether it's a stranger or a teacher or potential sponsors or anybody else, when you start talking education, when you start talking students that get to do things with their hands and build something, and then robots are just universally cool. I mean, there's something about that aspect. I remember as a kid, you know, when the space program was going strong, and I was under the full expectation because I remember from elementary school that they told us we'd have jetpacks and we'd have flying cars. And I'm still pissed that I don't have those yet, you know, so someone didn't keep up their end of the bargain. But there's just something wonderful about technology and the things that you can do with it, whether it's exploring space or exploring the deepest reaches of the ocean. And so when you think about rolling all that together in educational programs that reach, Sea Perch by itself reaches over 250,000 students a year. It's a drop in the bucket. There are a lot of other great robotics programs out there, but we get to do really cool, fun stuff, and we get to watch students that are very passionate about what they do. And there is no part of that whole equation that's not infectious and that doesn't attract people that want to be part of it in some way, shape, or form. So then we face the issue of resources and trying to make sure that the barriers to those opportunities are lowered and that we can try to make those equally available for everybody. And that's the biggest challenge, because well-resourced communities and students can jump into this pretty easily, but outreach helps us to identify new targets and new opportunities.
Thank you, Daryl.
Sure.
And now I know you've been really, really anxiously wanting to answer that question that I started with. Do you remember the question? It's about that rumor. It's about that rumor some of us have heard about. And I think that actually it provides a lot of insight into our head human.
It is absolutely true. And it's not true that I once applied, but I actually applied 19 different times. And as those who may follow Survivor know, that it happens twice a year. So if you do the math, you figure out that for 9.5 years of my life, I was submitting applications to be on Survivor. And it has a connection with RoboSub in that the 2001, I think it was 2000, RoboSub 2000 was in Orlando. held at the Disney World Resort. And one of our videographers had just come back from filming the first season of Survivor, and I'd never heard of it. And so I went home and started watching it that summer after sub ended, and just, got hooked on it immediately. So the short version of the story is that you apply, you send in your application with 100,000 other people, and you never hear a thing. And so I kept applying, and I kept trying to figure out how to break through the masses. And I went along with it, and I kind of got desperate near the end. Actually, before I got to the end, I found out that a woman who lived in the DC area had just come back from filming Survivor. I read about her in the newspaper. So I called director assistants, and I asked for her name, and she was in Annapolis, and I called and left a message on this random voicemail. And weirdly enough, she called me back and started giving me tips and insights on how to get through the system. But I still didn't break through, and I got to the point where I was like ready to call it a day. And so I ended up, out of desperation, what I thought was going to be my last ever application package. And the application was this, like a 15-page application plus a video plus, some other stuff. And I took a $100 bill, and I stapled it on top of the application package. And on a little Post-it note, I wrote, "All I want is an interview." And I sent this package off, and I figured that, some kid a temp in the mailroom was going to open my package and pocket $100 and throw my package away. But ultimately, what it resulted in was that I got my $100 bill back, because they're under strict regulations and they have to return anything that is submitted to them that would be perceived as a bribe. And so I got my $100 bill back, and I got a phone call about a week later. And so that led to me having the opportunity to not only have conversations with, and eventually I ended up meeting the head of casting for Survivor. And I still never made it on the show. So that just goes to show you that I was absolutely not what they were looking for. But it was 9.5 years of my life that I loved. I loved making the videos and trying to get creative. And it was just a fun side gig to go along with the job that I get to do. So that's kind of the shortened version of the story, with a whole lot of other pieces that are much better with alcohol. So maybe, sometime in the future when we're all together again.
So just for some context and background, our
Yes.
staff occasionally has what we call happy hours, which are like 4:00 East Coast time. It's like 1:00 where I am in San Diego, but it's lunchtime. So we all join in with our beverages of choice. Some of us have like Diet Cokes, but it's all good. And we're all happy. So thank you, Daryl, for that confirmation. But one thing that I wondered, my follow-up question to that is, what does that have to do in terms of your role as executive director of RoboNation? What do you bring from that experience to your role?
So what I would not go into in the timing of this call is if you think about 9.5 years going after one goal, I was, some might call it obsessed. Some might call it just, overly interested in it. But I was online, I was doing research, I was on bulletin boards with people that, supposedly had inside knowledge of how to break through the system. I was persistent, I got creative. It truly was just, it became, my holy grail of just to try to break through and get some kind of a response back. And after that $100 bill part of it, I had conversations and phone calls, and I had an inside track, and so I was able to actually go to. One year I drove up to LA while I was in San Diego for sub, and because I had told the casting director that I would buy an hour of her time, just to sit and talk to her even more than we did on the phone calls, and just thinking that I could break through. she accepted. I didn't buy her time, but she accepted to meet with me. And we visited, and I met Mark Burnett, who was the guy that created and was the founder of Survivor. I got as close as I could have gotten. And for me, it was all about the persistence and the determination to make something happen. And I think that's not only what we've done or tried to do, hopefully reflected in a lot of what RoboNation does. But now I can rely on a fantastic staff of people that I think are more creative than I am. They'd probably all get on Survivor before I would, but they are determined. They are passionate about what they do, and I'm thrilled to work with people. And then you extend that community aspect to beyond our staff, to our judges, to our volunteers, to our trainers, people that have spent a lot more time than we have working with students, and we get to learn from them. We get to try to adopt what they're doing and roll that into what we're doing. So that's again, I feel like I'm starting to ramble on a little bit, but that's where I think that these crossroads fit.
Thank you. And I'm putting something in the chat because I made reference to whether Daryl maybe might want to be a Ray. And it just so happens that Mary Monk from the Mutton Foundation is on our call today, and so she gave me the very specific background of the Ray that I was trying to refer to but couldn't remember accurately why he should be considered being a Mobula Monkiana, a monk's devil ray.
Well, I live in the Tampa Bay area, generally speaking, so I mean, it would be appropriate.
So actually, we're now going to open it up. If you have a specific question, Dave, that you'd like Daryl to answer.
Oh no.
Please,
I thought we weren't doing this. You're about to lose control of the whole thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're concerned about that, I can have all the questions directed to Juliana.
Well, how much time do we need for the rest of what Juliana had on the schedule? So I know there's more than just this part of it.
This is it. It's just questions with you, Daryl.
Oh man.
We still have 18 minutes if we can fill with questions.
Oh, I have no doubt with the people that I know are on this call, and Mary, we're delighted to have you, by the way. But yeah, I know that there are an array of questions.
Here's one from AUVSI Foundation alum. How did it start? How did RoboSub start?
Oh, I know. I don't know who prompted that, but he's assuming that he's on the call. I had the great fortune of meeting Dr. Tom Curtin. We were coming back from an oceans conference, as I recall it. I just climbed on a plane, and if you go to a conference and you talk all week, the last thing you want to do is talk when you get on the plane. I just wanted to sit and decompress and kind of let the week fade away. And there was this guy sitting next to me in my seat, and everybody on the plane seemed to know who he was. So I mean, he like a rock star status. People would walk up and down the aisles and they would say something to him. And I finally, we were probably 10 minutes from landing, and I finally turned to him and I said, "Who are you?" And it was Tom Curtin. And Tom Curtin, as I later found out, is truly a rock star in the world of the oceanographic community writ large. And so Tom and I, in that last 10 minutes of landing and then briefly in baggage claim, he found out who I was and that we ran competitions, and he said, "Hey, I've always wanted to do an underwater competition." And it's like, boy, can I help you, And so that was what really sort of started what has turned, not only was it resulted in the very first RoboSub, which was in '98. And it became not only a wonderful professional relationship, but a great long-term personal relationship as well. So, Tom, I will thank you yet again. We'll never be able to say it enough, because RoboSub is coming up on 25 years this year. And it's daunting when you see kids who were, competitors back in 2000, and they show up, with their kids. They're married and have kids and all this other stuff, years down the road. It kind of maps the perspective on how long we've been doing some of this. But RoboSub is a full credit to Tom Curtin. So.
Well, I wouldn't say full credit. I'd say it was a partnership from the very beginning.
True too.
And you, excuse me. Wait a second. I can actually. There we go. Here I am. I can actually say that you were an equal partner to what I did, and that's what made it. That's what made it happen.
It worked out wonderfully well, and it'd be great to. One of these days, we'll go back and actually try to figure out and track the legacy that some of these competitions had, and the impact. There's Angie waving her hand.
Angie, by the way, asked the question.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I love that Angie, story.
It's a great story, and it is. It just goes to show you when, again, you talk to people, and good things happen.
It's actually probably the poster child for the role of serendipity in how innovation happens in general. Really, if you dig into most innovations, the source of them, things we take for granted today, you find out there were serendipitous paths that crossed. And, it just goes to show you that you got to get out and mix it up. If you sit in your office all day, you're not going to get any serendipitous, connections.
Very true.
So we have another question from one of our partners. Elisa is actually asking a very loaded question, I think, Elisa. And that is, do you have a favorite competition, Daryl?
Yes. Next.
It was loaded.
It's always been RoboSub. Come on, admit it, Daryl.
I don't think I'm supposed to admit it that I have a favorite. I have to be ecumenical.
Yeah, impartial. So
I'm gonna stand by my impartiality, because there's truly something. They're all very different. Some of them take place in very favorable climates, and some of them take place in other places. And it's, you go to a CPERS competition and watch the enthusiasm of middle school and high school kids, and you could say that about a lot of these different ones. So, but yes, I do have my favorite. So
Elise's comment is you love them all differently like kids.
Yeah, very true. That's a great answer.
Yes, spoken like
a better answer.
True communications expert. Here's another question, and this is from Ricarlos Abreu. I hope I'm pronouncing that. He is co-captain of the RoboBoat team from Puerto Rico, right? So his question is...
Speak of enthusiasm, yes.
Yeah.
That team is full of enthusiasm.
Right. And so his question is, I think, do you love robots in general or maritime robotics? Is that...
No, I love robots in general. Yeah. Yep.
From Puerto Rico.
What we are fortunate that this points back to Tom Curtin. So not only was the serendipitous relationship or the meeting on that plane the beginning of RoboSub, but it also opened up a broader relationship between whether it was the foundation or RoboNation and the Office of Naval Research. And that's an organization that does a tremendous amount of good and does a lot of forward-thinking activities that are not all maritime related, but there's a lot of it that's there. So when you think of, if you know the broader robotics competition communities, and you've got FIRST and VEX, and you've got a whole host of others that have saturated certain markets, we are really fortunate to have carved out a very strong position in the maritime community, because other than MATE, which is a great maritime competition as well, and for those of you that don't know it, I would encourage you to look at it. MATE is an ROV competition, but it's a much bigger, much more complex ROV. It's not the full autonomy side of it. But anyway, so we're fortunate that we've got a huge carve out in the maritime side of it, because you think about the ocean and all of the exploration and the role that robots will be playing in that side of it. And I think we've got a lot of students that have gone through our programs that go on to work for organizations that do that professionally. And that's a great legacy. We're very, very proud of where our students have gone on. Next.
These questions are rolling in. I'm going to take the one from MIF first before I take Dave's question. MIF is our partner in Australia, working with us very closely on the RobotiX competition. MIF's question is, how did RobotiX start, and how has it evolved into the competition we'll see later this year? Good plug-in for RobotiX, MIF.
It is. And for those of you that want the ultimate challenge, if you haven't looked at it, look at RobotiX. It is the high-end, the most complex, the most sophisticated event that we do, and to the point that it only happens every 2 years. We greatly missed out on having RobotiX 2020, but 2022 will happen in November in Sydney, and right outside of Sydney, Penrith, I guess technically speaking, but it's in New South Wales. And RobotiX started as some conversations that took place that started in Singapore and that carried over between the Singaporean Ministry of Defense and the Office of Naval Research. So it's another one of our ONR programs. And those conversations started to this, hey, what about a Pacific Rim focused event? And so that was in about 2010, 2011. We started working on it in 2012. The first event was in 2014 in Singapore in Marina Bay. Great pictures and great videos from that event. And it was a partnership between RoboNation, ONR, and the Singapore Ministry of Defense. The first year that we did it, there were 5 countries that were all closely aligned, and they each got to pick 3 teams. And so we had 15 teams that participated in the first RobotiX. And then after that, the next iteration, 2016 and 18, were in Hawaii. We opened it up beyond those 5 countries and beyond those 15 schools, and started to try to expand it. And now that we're at 2022, it's open to anybody from anywhere in the world. It will still predominantly take place probably around the Pacific Rim, but that may evolve as well. So great event, very complex systems. They used to, earlier it was a maritime platform that had an underwater component. And in Australia, for the first time, it's going to be a maritime platform with an aerial component. So we were never able to fly drones off of those WAM-Vs when we were in Hawaii or in Singapore because of airspace issues. And now we get to do that in Penrith in Australia. Thank you, MIF.
Thank you, MIF. And then I'm going to go to a question from Dave Mann. He says, what are your thoughts on how to grow each competition? In other words, how to get more participants involved? And then once we get them involved, how do we handle the growth?
I think it would be a much longer answer to be specific about each one. But I think what we have to continue to do, and we need to do a more aggressive job of getting the word out through the academic communities that will support the competitions, support the teams. We have so many teams that just participate and go to tremendous lengths, and they're nothing more than an ad hoc club of students that may get little support from their university. And this is primarily the autonomous events and not the K through 12 side of it. But if we can get more schools involved, get more faculty advisors that play an active role, and find more external support to become the continuity year over year as the students, cycle in and cycle out, then I think all of them will be better served. And I think there is a much larger appetite for all of these events that we haven't tapped into yet. And I think hopefully, if things are in fact stabilizing somewhat globally and we can get out and start, shaking the trees a lot more, then hopefully we're going to see a big uptick. We're seeing a lot of strong interest, a lot of pent up interest, I think, in all of the events that we're planning to do this coming summer. And I think that's just going to be this sense of rejuvenation for a lot of those.
Okay, a few more questions. I'm going to rapid fire these. Parth from The Ohio State University. He has a question, and maybe this is both to you, Daryl, and maybe also to Dave Mann. And that question is, what has been your favorite theme for RoboSub in 25 years?
Oh man, I'm going to defer to Dave on that one.
Dave Mann.
Yes.
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 To me, it was the very first one, just because it was the very first one. It sort of broke the mold of the old and started to mold for the new.
Your first one as a competitor or first one as technical?
There was no themes when I was a competitor.
Oh,
correct.
Oh, so you introduced the theme when you became technical director.
Mm-hmm.
What was that first year theme?
X marks the spot, Dave, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was.
Yep.
It was
My favorite still too.
It was the pirate map.
Yep.
Wow, this is like memories.
You have no idea. Yeah.
Okay. Let's
keep going. Rapid fire. Let's go.
What is your biggest piece of career advice to young college students trying to figure out what field they want to pursue?
Pursue something that you're passionate about and that you enjoy.
Okay, next
it's question. A lot of
oh, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Buy Apple stock. Yeah, that was that was the other day. I had a test question of like, what would you tell your 18-year-old self? And my answer was buy Apple stock. But a long time ago, not now.
Okay, from being a RobotiX 2018 judge, this is from William Van Delsum, who was a RobotiX judge. It appeared to me that the teams could benefit from more training in systems engineering. Are there efforts in training directions like that?
I completely agree, first and foremost. And we're trying to figure out, in terms of content and substance, how to impact something like that. There's a lot of focus on tutorials, on content, on speakers, on things that we can provide as an outside organization. But when you're talking, whether it's systems engineering or even something more specific, now we're sort of getting into the role of the universities, typically what they do. And I would love to see us play an active role in making that become a point of awareness. We're trying to get more involved with some professional organizations that deal with engineering schools and deal with the deans and deal with the engineering universities. And, maybe we can have an impact that way.
Before I ask, there's one last question. Dave's advice is do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. So good Davism. And then the last question is from Mary Monk, and she asks, how do schools get funding for our programs?
Probably if you had 10 schools that were on a panel in front of us, they would probably give you 10 different answers. It is not as coordinated or structured. Our approach for a long time has been not to prescribe a path for a lot of these, but to give them advice and tips and some tactics, and even to look at other schools that have done things, but let them come at it with maximum creativity. There are so many different outlets for schools, and there are plenty of schools that don't have outlets. So we have got to try to find out how we can do more for resourcing and even to matchmake, if you want to call it that. And it's one of the things that we aspire to do with AUVSI, and that is to bring schools to the attention of the industry in respective communities and let them make that connection between the professionals and the academics, which is ultimately that pipeline that we want to foster anyway. And so if we can find a better way to do that, then that's great. And we will continue to strive to do that. But the models for how funding happens vary from school to school and event to event.
Thank you.
And Daryl, can I make a quick comment on that? The
Of
one
course.
school from New Mexico was such an eye opener. Living in a local motel, eating out of 7-Elevens, and what did they do? They were just completely off the charts.
Yeah, very true.
Thank you, Steve. So with that, it is on the hour. We finished on the hour. Thank you, Daryl. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And Daryl, do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, there are so many people on the call that I would thank in person that were either the competitors are the heart and soul of what we do, but we have so many stories, and maybe we can find a way, either Janelle or Alicia, to start capturing some of those stories. Dave is an example. Dave was a student competitor that evolved to become a technical director, and he's got his own career separate from the week that he spends with us. Yeah, a good example, Dave. But there are plenty of stories of people that have come through these events and gone on and done great things, and we need to capture those better. We know that, but we've got volunteers, we've got board members that support what we do. We've got people that train, and then at the end of the day, my ultimate thanks is to the people that are on staff at RoboNation. I may be the head human, but we are so much better as an organization because of all the other people that have joined it since 2009 or 8 or 9, when it was really just me. It would have been hopeless if it had stayed just me. So to have all these talented people that have come through and that are using their passions to go out and do new things, we continue to look for new ways to grow and expand and really to reach more students. And that's the ultimate goal.